going to pick back up. And again, let me apologize for running through this subject, this most important subject, in just these 2 sessions. But I could not miss the opportunity to say a few things on it. But I want you to be reminded that I've not said nearly enough. But a few more things need to also be added to what I've already thus far have mentioned with you. Again, I want you to work with and process this whole business about your expectations and really realize that it is the frustration of your expectations that leads to most of the anger in our relationships. That anger now, triggered by the frustration of our expectations, coupled with our emotional illiteracy, is what normally results in divorce and unsatisfied relationships. So I want you not to forget about your work on managing your anger. You just can't work on adjusting your expectation as though you will reduce some of the conflict, but you got to work on both sides. Lieutenant mentioned before the break that he noticed right away on his list that a lot of the things that he was expecting from an individual were things that he was projecting onto the other individual, which turned out to be things that he needed to do for himself. It's a very important thing. It's a strange quirk in the human nature that what we need to do for ourselves, that's why we experience it as a need, is manifest in the form of an expectation from other people. I mean, it's a real key concept to get before you move away from working on your list. I want you to understand that everything, most of the things that you put on that list, there's a few things that legitimately belong there, but the bulk of that list is made up of things that you have projected onto the other person. These are the things you want the other person to put in your beggar's bowl. Now, by definition, you're begging fundamentally because you don't have these things. That's why you're expecting them. That's why you have your beggar bowl out. But these are the very things that you need to do for yourself. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is the fact that out of this list of expectations, you have formed some kind of model of what you expect, and not only what you expected, but some kind of model that your relationship should conform to. That forms a model in your mind. So what I want to do now is spend some time demythologizing your notion of what should constitute a relationship. What are you using as a model to inform the relationship? We know these expectations. What kind of model has arisen from your list of expectations? Let me put it like that. If you look at your list again and look at all those expectations you got down there, what kind of model of the relationship emerges from that? Yes, sir.
What the things I have down on mine is modeled from my family.
From your family?
From my, my mother and father, as they related to us as their children. There was a lot of things in which that I've listed, not a lot, well, several things that I've listed on the contribution side, which directly reflected family life more so than a personal thing with my wife.
With your wife?
Yeah. One of the things I've got to be a good family man. Again, I know it's very critical and very crucial to females, and my wife in particular, that I'll have a loving relationship with her family. Because how many times do we hear that I'm always doing for your family, but you never doing for my family.
We're going to see my mother.
So, yeah, that the family relationship and how much I can be a good father to my children also. So, I put that.
These expectations sort of coalesce into a kind of concept. We each have a concept of what a relationship should be like. And then we try to make that other party that we're in relationship with adapt to that concept, to fit into that concept. But it's just a concept. And a concept that is very often not rooted on any reality. As sad as I say, these are concepts that we formed somewhere in our own family systems during our childhood, right? That we now project onto our wife or husband. How many of us noticed as you made that list that you were looking for certain behavior from your wife or your husband that was almost identical to what you were getting from your mother or your father? Did anybody see that? Huh? You want to give us share a specific example since Sadiki last time enriched us so much. So if you want to share a particular quality that you are expecting from your husband, Sadiki, that was a projection of what went on in your own family system.
Well, the meals. My mom would prepare for my father his lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do the same with my husband to make it simple. But there are some deeper things that I would have to do privately. But that is one of the things that I can recall. There are others.
Yes, I understand sometimes these are things that are more personal. But the point is that when you look very closely, this list of expectations just didn't fall out of the sky. Did you notice? It was in you. You were simply retrieving these expectations. I asked that last time when you were doing the homework, Emma had suggested to us that we kind of look at the psychohistorical origins of these expectations. And whenever we do that kind of archaeology of consciousness, we begin to discover that the genesis of most of these seeds of these expectations was carried over from our childhood, right? And then projections. In my own life, one of the things that I carried over into my relationship with my wife was concerned with money. I mentioned to you about money, sex, and these expectations being the almost entire basis for all of the conflict in this relationship. And my discovery, and it was a revelation, Baba, as Baba says, a shocking revelation. My relationship with my mother was that whenever I needed some money, she would always give. I was a finicky eater, even as a child. And I wouldn't eat the normal soul food, quote unquote. I guess the seeds of vegetarianism was in me. I didn't even like bologna that was too thick. Finicky, very much orientated towards sweets. No wonder I wind up running a cookie company. In any case, if there was the traditional good old soul food for dinner, the pinto beans, the black-eyed peas with ham, I just didn't want that kind of food. I preferred some sandwich cookies and potato chips. Problem, of course, I didn't have a dough. But my mother understood that I'm not going to eat this stuff. And I have to eat something, and she would always find a nickel or a dime or something, and always would slip it to me, no matter how bad it was for the rest. It was almost like a special understanding we had. It was a deal between me and my mom, okay? And in return, I'll do whatever needs to be done. Well, I developed the expectation as a child that a good woman, a woman who really loves me, my mother is the first model, that's the only model I need. She is the first model of what I expect from a woman. Right. She is all womankind to me when I'm in my developmental stages. And so I expected, well, any woman that really loves me, I have to compare her to the standards of my mother. Have you noticed? Have you noticed, man? You measure the standard, the criteria of the judgment whether your wife really loves you based on how close it approximates the behavior of your mom. Well, in any case, since my mom never refused me any money when I needed it, naturally, when I found my wife, who I thought loved me, like my mother loved me, you have to understand the mind has to always contrast. There's no other way for it to have knowledge. Are you aware of that? You have to be able to make contrast. And the foundation of my contrast was my mother. So contrasting my wife loved me, how do I measure that? You know, or she loved me, I assume she loves me, therefore I can carry over that behavior. Well, it took a few years, but finally my wife got me straight. All right? And it was a while because it really hurt when I needed money. You know, she would ask me questions, what are you going to do with it? What did you do with your money? I worked hard for this money. And I always took that personal. You know, it offended me. Why are you asking me these questions? My mama didn't never ask me. She just gave. So this unconditional giving of money to me was an expectation that was formed from my relationship with my mother that I carried over and projected onto my wife, and the poor woman has suffered untold misery because of that. And the source of the conflict that arose at that point before the insight was had always centered around that. It will make me angry when she wouldn't give me any money. You know, you're my wife, you're supposed to give me money. You're not supposed to ask me what I did with my money, or, you know, you're supposed to just give me money. And I would always get angry about that, you see? And I would feel, oh, she don't love me, she don't understand me, and all these other things that we have discussed in detail that comes as a consequence of anger when you don't know the source, the origin, of none of the good stuff we know now. I have to let you know and share with you a fact that, like many people in this room, you know, I'm speaking to you out of experience. Whatever ring of authority that I have, it's not coming from no books. This is experience. So I know that that was an early source of conflict in my own relationship with my wife. Just this carryover. And I had to understand this is not my mother. And I had to adapt to my wife. You see? And of course, she was carrying over expectations to me. Right? These were these secret expectations that we carried with us to the altar that we just didn't tell each other about. Right? That begins to come out in the wash. And when it doesn't meld, and unless you married a woman that is precisely your mother, which is impossible, then invariably there's going to be some conflict, some shape, form, or fashion. So when you are looking at your list, you can begin to see your concept. So one of the concepts, part of the concept of a authentic relationship that I formed was that there should be this free, unquestioned, unconditional giving of money to me. That was my concept. The question is, look at your concepts. You know, that's just, I'm sharing with you one aspect, but you have to squeeze everything down. You know, every little thing down. My only regret, etc., is that prior to getting married, I got married at 20. But at the age of about 13, I had wrote out a kind of prolegomena, if you will, a concept. And I lost the damn thing. You know, if only I had saved that, maybe I would have been spared. But the point is that you have to get in touch with your concept. And then you're going to have to see that that concept is based on the reality of the person you're in a relationship to, and you have to adjust and adapt where appropriate. Simple, but very, very difficult to do. But it has to be done. So I want you to look at the concepts that you have brought, the preconceived concepts that you have brought into your relationship, and see to what extent the unreality of that concept is the source of the clash that exists between you and your other significant person. And the result of that conflict and the clashing has been a source of misery for you. It can be removed. But again, the cure is awareness. I say this over and over again. There's only one cure, antidote, awareness. The more unaware we are, then the more conflict we have. So I want you to look at the concept. And I want you to demythologize it, because that concept comes with a philosophy. Right? Why a wife should you know, do, and then you got your whole list, don't you? Right? And whenever the person you're married to doesn't fit into that, you're in trouble. It could be a husband should do, and then you try to slot that person in there. But you never examine your premise. I'm asking you to examine your premise. Look at it. See what material you're working with. And then demythologize it. Now, we said earlier a little bit about karma. So I want to spend a little more time with you on this. For those of you who come to satsangs, I promise you that over the next several weeks, satsangs, that we will be exploring the 7 tasks of living a spiritual life. And if you recall, we talked about Dharma, the first principle, and we'll continue that discussion tomorrow. And we'll be talking about karma, seva, bhakta, love, et cetera, but more will be said about karma then. But for the purposes of our topic today, we have to talk about the karma of personal relationships. Have you ever thought about it? Karma is not an isolated phenomenon that just applies to how long you will live, the state of health you will have, how much money. Karma is most clearly seen in terms of your relationship. So we want to talk about the karma, if you will, of human relationships. Is everybody fairly familiar with karma? I don't need to go backtrack over that. Basically, we say that karma is the law that ensures that you will reap what you sow. It is the law of cause and effect. Karma is the law that says that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, as Newton framed it in his third principle of physics. But it fundamentally says that you, at any time point in your life, are experiencing exactly what you put out in the universe. In terms of wealth, health, everything, but more importantly and more dramatically in terms of the people in your life. So we want to talk about the karma of human relationships. Now, to appreciate this, I have to demythologize the notion that these relationships are based on romance. You see, we have romanticized these relationships. We've come together out of this romantic stuff. Not at all. We've come together in order to balance a comic account. Okay? When you understand the concept of the karma of human relationships, then we have to talk about the concept called duty. Don't confuse it with dharma. This is dharma. Duty. What is duty? What is your duty? What is duty? We talk so much about that, but what exactly is that? I have a duty as a mother, I have a duty as a father, I have a duty as a husband, I have a duty as a wife. What is duty? All at once.
Obligation, responsibility.
Obligations, okay.
Responsibility.
Responsibilities.
It's probably your personal shoulds.
What is duty?
I see it's positional responsibility. Just positional responsibility.
All right, expand
Just
upon
based
that.
on what position you're in.
A little bit more about it. I think I have a grip of what you said, but let the audience also partake in your insight. Doing what the reality of the situation dictates. Duty is the capacity to respond according to the reality of the situation. Duty is the ability to respond to the reality of the situation. to act according to the dictates of what is required for the reality of the situation. That is duty. Obligation arises out of what? The sense that you're obligated to do something. What does that arise out of? Now that you have a better need. Okay. I mean, when we say we obligated, what are we talking about? When you feel obligated. Huh?
Your condition.
Right. Condition. It's the exact opposite of duty. When you act out of obligation, you are at all time conforming to your conditioning. Hence the feel of being pressured, of choicelessness in the behavior. Right? It's Pavlovian. When you don't act out of obligation, you know, you see how uncomfortable you feel. You know, it's like, you know, you're doing something wrong. Right? Because it has something to do with all of what you believe to be right, all of what you believe to be wrong, what your mama told you should do, what you read in the books, etc., etc., etc. All right? Duty is a very different experience. Duty is perceiving reality and then acting according to the dictates of reality. It is doing it. It is responding according to the reality of the situation, the ability to respond. That's what we mean by responsibility. Having the ability to respond to the reality of the situation. That is doing your duty. How does that apply to human relationships? I want to push you a little bit because, quite frankly, you all have enough background to move in a little deeper as we explore this whole business about human relationships. Karma. Karma is nothing but a package of reality. Certain events, circumstances, what is very often called crossroads, are presented to each of us. That require us to respond to. Now you can respond out of your conditions, which is really technically not a response, is it? At all. Or you can do your duty. I wish you could see your faces. Huh? Huh? It's turning. What is the duty in a relationship? What is your duty to your spouse? Well, of course, it means that you have to respond to the reality of that spouse. Is that correct? The relationship has to be based on who the spouse really is. You get an insight, for instance, Lieutenant said earlier, we tend to project not only our expectation, but we project a whole set of things onto a person, an identity, don't we? How many of us have projected a certain identity onto our lives and our husbands? Huh? Don't we do that? Can you feel how you do that? I project an identity of who I think and who I want my wife to be, and then I try to respond to that identity. That is very often totally unrelated to her reality. That's all. Right? And the net result is unnecessary conflict. Are you all following me? It's very important, you know, if you're not following this part, because we want to get this as a very important component. Let me put it like this. How many know who they're married to? How many have a real good sense? How many people have had the experience, right, of discovering that I'm not even married to the person I thought I was married to? That, wow, this person is different, Rob. Huh? Right? You see? You had that experience that, my God, this is not the person that I thought I was married to. This is a totally different being. The reality is that they were never the person you thought you were married to. They never was. It's just that at some point in the relationship, you lose your capacity to deceive yourself about the reality of the person you are. And this produces crisis. When a marriage comes into crisis, fundamentally it is occurring because something has happened to break through all of that deception that you've been perpetrating on yourself, and it has forced the reality of who that person is through. And you are shocked. God, I'm married to a monster. Crisis. So I want you to begin to look at how accurate is your perception of the person that you're in relationship to. And where it is not accurate, one needs to adapt. Now let me talk a little bit more about this business about adapting. I grant you this is an abstruse subject, so I'm only jesting with you. A lot of this stuff will bubble up into you late one night. You'll wake up, sit straight up in the bed, say, oh, now I know what this supposed to be. You know, so it sometimes takes a delayed effect on you. But I want to put it out there because we have to understand something about food. The mystics and the saints all teach us that we come in and out of relationships based on God. It is spiritual. This is common. Okay? There is a give and take in it. It's not made out of that stuff that you read about Romeo and Juliet. That's fiction. See? That's make-believe. It's basically common. There's giving and taking that has to take place in a situation. You have some things to give and you have some things to take in a situation. And to do your own duty, one has to develop detachment. We're going to be talking about detachment. It's one of the four principles, challenges, tasks that confronts those of us who want to live a spiritual life. So we want to link up a discussion of detachment and duty and all these other things. And I want to talk about the role that detachment plays. Because detachment is the ability to release your grip on these expectations. Is that detachment? Do you follow me? You have to become detached, don't you, from these things on your list, right? And do your duty. All right? You got to become detached and do your duty. It's like a two-step. All right? You got to become detached and you have to do your duty. Yes, sir.
That definition, detachment is the ability to release
these expectations, right? Because you can't have frustration where there's not expectations. All frustration is the result of a failure of your expectations coming into being, and then you get frustrated. Right? You have to be able to detach yourself in your human relationship. Now, it sounds dry because you said, but one, if I detach myself from my wife, I won't love her. No. If you detach yourself for the first time, you can love. What I'm telling you is that there is no possibility to have the experience of love where there is attachment. Never has been, never will be. Love can only happen when one is detached. Before, you're loving a person for all that stuff you projected onto her. That's not even a person. You're loving this image of the person that you created in your head. It's like a form of masturbation. You understand? It's not real. It's not the real thing. You're in love with your ideal, your concept of that person. It had nothing to do with that person. And very often what happens is that when that person's reality overrides your image that you have created in your own mind and then it's trying to relate to, it throws you into a crisis. Detachment puts you immediately in contact with that person's reality. And for the first time, you really can love this person for what they are. And not what you think they should be or think they are. It's a very different experience. And one therefore has to develop detachment in these relationships. It's a very subtle concept to get. So you have to bear with me here. I'm and just watching to see when somebody's eyes percolate and I know I've hit pay dirt here. Because I understand it takes a little while. Because we don't normally think about it like that. Right? We think quite the opposite, though. Quite the opposite. But the mystics are saying that, no, the state that we have to achieve in terms of our relationship is one of detachment. Non-possessive. You don't own nobody. When you're in a state of attachment, you feel like you own a person. My wife, like my shoes, my pants, my car, my husband, as if the person is an object to be possessed. Those kind of attitudes arise out of attachment. You see, attachment is an ego thing. It's an ego trip. It is the ego claiming of territory. Yes, ma'am.
So would detachment mean no matter what this, in say your spouse or your friend or whatever, no matter what type of unhappy situations or problems they have caused you to have, or that you think they have caused you to have, you can look over all of this and still love them as much as you did when you first met them, when you just had that first exciting feeling, that infatuation. Nothing changes that. That feeling never changes. Although there has been some unhappy times or whatever. Is that a part of detachment, or? Because
Well,
I'm not.
I think I can probably work detachment into that, but that's really something very different.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Detachment is the state of relationship where you're not trying to control any kind of outcome in this person.
Right.
You detach.
Okay. Right.
It is conferring maximum freedom on another person.
Okay.
You're not trying to control. You're not trying to dominate. You're not trying to possess. You're not trying to own the person. You're not trying to edit the person. You're not trying to make the person conform to your concept. You're not doing any of that. You're detached. Yes, you do.
So, what we just discovered is, since I discovered I was not making a true contribution to my relationship, then we found out that the relationship was a convenience or a, what's the word I'm trying to get? Business arrangement. So I've been going around saying
Well, I won't be that harsh. I mean, we use harsh language like here, but please, when we go out of here, let's not use those. We don't want to offend nobody, right? We're just scientifically looking at the subject.
So you're saying this detachment is becoming a realization that to obtain this true contribution, that must be detached.
Yes. Very, 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 very well put. You cannot make an authentic contribution without first having attained a relationship of detachment. You have to be detached in order to really contribute by definition. You have to be detached by definition in order to make an authentic contribution to a person. Because when you detach, you're not trying to control the outcome of anything. For instance, you make a suggestion to your wife. You give her some advice, and you step and you leave it alone. You do not try to beat her and make her do that thing. You understand? You're detached. You did your duty. You are her husband. Your duty, the reality is that she's about to do something that she is not aware, or he's not aware, will have counterproductive effects on them. Your duty is to respond to that reality. The appropriate response is to bring it to their attention and then let go. And allow them the freedom to choose to act on their own. You see the difference? Not to try to manipulate, control, force them to do something. It's not indifference. It's respect. You see, when you're detached, you can respect another person, but you're not trying to control the outcome. You can see it very clearly, for instance, when we are in a relationship with a person where we're making all that effort to edit them and make them over in our image that we have of them. We all feel the strain and energy that's put into that. Did you know that most of the energy that is going in these relationships is our energies directed at making the other person in your relationship conform to the image you have created of them in your head? Right? That's almost all your energy is spent in. Notice that. Right? Detachment is dropping all that nonsense. You see? You're not trying to make them in your at all. You detach from that whole process. You know, detaching is from a process. Okay? Yes, sister.
Did you use that menu on a child?
Yes, of course. You have to be detached. Now, again, it's important to understand, because there's a great misunderstanding among us that detachment means indifference, right? And we confuse it. So maybe I need to talk a little bit about detachment in these relationships. Because what I'm saying may sound shocking. I'm saying that your relationships improve to the degree that you attain detachment. That sounds strange to the Western mind, because we've been conditioned to believe everything otherwise.
Bhagwan, if you're used to being in a relationship in which you're not doing that, and you suddenly start to loosen your grip, and you start acting in this detached fashion with your mate or with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, isn't that, might that cause some problems?
It's not outside, it's inside. Detachment is an inner phenomenon. It has nothing to do with your behavior.
But isn't it going to manifest on the outer? I mean, if I start acting in a detached fashion with my old man, isn't he going to, I guess I can't, in my mind, I can't see how it wouldn't be viewed by him as being indifferent. Indifference.
Yes.
You know,
but it can be viewed by
because
him.
because
Yes.
you've been acting in another way, and all of a sudden you change.
Let me tell you, when you become detached, the whole changes on the inside of you. Detachment does not mean I don't speak to this person no more, I don't talk, we don't go to church. That's not detachment. That's indifference. You're confused. You see, detachment is an inner state. Right? Detachment is you put forth the best effort and you leave the results alone. You understand you can't control results. You put forth all the effort, you simply relinquish an insistence and demand on the outcome. It's a very subtle thing. We're going to talk about it more. I just wanted to throw it out here because I know we're not going to be able to cover everything in here. I'm trying to give you some key things. What you don't get, we'll work out inside some when we come to the discussion on detachment, right? But I want to get it in here so that when we do get around to the full-bloom discussion on detachment, it won't be all new to you. But you have to understand how to achieve this degree of detachment in these relationships if you're going to have any shot at contribution and happiness and satisfaction and all of these things. Yes, Lieutenant?
So I'm taking detachment to mean, like, say, for example, you know, a person needs some medication. So you know this medication will help them, even though they don't believe it. But you know, for whatever reason, this will help them. So when you detach, you give them this medication. You don't insist that they take it. You don't beat them over the head and keep pressuring them to take this medication when you know it's good for them. So what you're saying is just give it to them. Whether they take it or not, it's really for them, not you, right? So it's equivalent to something like that.
Something like that. That's coming closer.
Is it psychic?
It's all inside of you.
I mean, is it psychic? I mean, psychological for yourself?
Yes, yes, for yourself.
Okay.
It's a state of for yourself. Let's see if we can add to what Lieutenant has said here. Let me see if I can come up with some easier analogies. The problem, of course, is that there are no easy analogies. You have to just keep doing this until it breaks through in your mind. What the mystics are talking about the role that detachment plays in the development of healthy human relationships. And I pointed out that it is not indifference, so please don't misunderstand it. Let me give you an example, for instance. When you are not in a state of detachment, one of the first things that you will find yourself doing in your relationship is blaming. There's a lot of blaming going on. Okay. For instance, let's use an example in nature. Imagine now, for instance, that it's raining outside, right? And I had planned yesterday that today I wanted to go out, have a nice picnic, be out in nature, and it's raining outside. So all of my expectations are dashed. Automatically I'm experiencing some anger and disappointment, etc., right? Now, I'm going to blame my wife because you made it rain outside. I'm blaming you, right? I am not adapting to the reality of the situation at all. The reality is rain. It's not her fault. It's rain. You see? Nor do I blame myself. It's raining. That's the reality. Now adapt. That adapting and doing what is reality requires is duty. Yes.
Well, how about if you said, I think we should go Saturday, and she keeps saying you should go Sunday. And Sunday it rains.
Okay.
Can you blame her?
No.
You would say, hey, look, you went Saturday like I said.
You might want to
Sunday
do
and bright.
Sure, you.
But I went along with what you said.
You'll be
Sunday,
very tempted to
and it's
blame her.
raining.
You will be very tempted. But what is the reality? Right. See, what is the reality? The reality was that you adapted. You did, right? If it was sunny today, right? That was the reality. That was the opportunity. You pushed it into the future. You didn't adopt. There was no guarantee that it wouldn't rain Sunday. The whole business is to adapt to the reality of life. I have to give you some preliminary background information on this, you see, so that this will help you to really begin to understand the karma of human relationship. You thinking you came together because you fell in love, you met at the bar, you met at the theater, you fell in love, and that's how you all got together. Is that pretty close to how we explain how we came into these relationships? No, there's another problem. How does it happen, Linda? You correct me. How do we meet?
Just meet.
We just
Someone
meet by chance.
introduces you.
Someone introduced us.
Or, you meet at a party or at a show or something like that.
Yes. And we come together, we fell in love, and now we're husband, wife, or we're item. Is that right? Yes, Ron?
They do it like the white people do it in the movies now. They take themselves out like they're friends. They say, let's be friends. And then they end up falling in love and doing everything else,
Do we ever have the perception when we come into relationships that there is a common here? That I have in common with this person? Is there something I have to give this person? Something I have to take from this person? Baba says
Yeah. Well, me and her relationship was really different in the sense that we knew each other maybe about a year, and then we didn't see each other for about a year. And just before I saw her again, I thought about it. The night before, the next day, I saw her. And it was just there. We didn't like each other. Really, we didn't like each other. And out of not liking each other for a year, I hadn't thought nothing about it. And the night before, I thought about her, and it just shocked me. And the next day, I saw her, and she just gave me a hug. And I was, and it scared me because I said, well, I don't like this woman, but why is she in my mind now? And so from that point, I always knew, even, when we were fighting and stuff now, still, I'm fighting, but I feel like it feel like this is how it's supposed to be. It just feels that way.
Yes.
So it feels right. When you were talking earlier, you were talking about needs and expectations and everything, and I was thinking to myself, well, that sometimes it's not exactly what you might be asking for, but it's exactly what you need.
which is a whole different discussion. Right?
Yeah.
Because the assumption is that we are conscious of what we really need. When in fact, we may not be aware of it. And what the mystics have said that you are continuously being given what you need. matter of adapting to this thing. Well, I can see I'm going to have difficulty with this, getting you to the point where you can understand this thing called detachment. I won't punish you any longer. But what we'll do then, I was prepared to spend the remaining of this time exploring these things, but I think I better lay down some preparation for you. Perhaps I pushed you a little too far out of my own creed. But certainly let's take advantage of these few minutes that remains in this session, since we're not going to get a chance probably to talk about these things much more. Next week is the last sessions in this series dealing with anger. And my only suggestion is that maybe we will do a different set of series at some other point in time if that's you all desire, and spend a little bit more time. I probably would need to do 4 or 5 setup workshops with you just for you to get this thing in. But for those of you who are precocious, I just put this on the table for you to look at. This detachment, this movement, this dropping of expectation, this dropping of demands on people. You see, this releasing your urge to control the outcome of situations, circumstances, and to focus more on developing the ability to adapt to reality. That's what detachment is all about. You see, in a state of detachment, you eliminate anxiety because you're not trying to control, you're simply trying to adapt to whatever reality is going on around you at any given time. That's where your whole energy is at. If it is raining, I'm not trying to blame my wife, I'm not blaming myself. All that energy that is expended in blaming is now assigned to coming up with creative ways to adapt, right? My wife is not anything like the image that I created of her when we were out dating somewhere. This is how she is. And rather than me spend any energy trying to mold her over, any energy criticizing her, I adapt. You see, I behave responsibly. I adapt to this like I would adapt to a rain. You see, if this is my wife, this is my child, this is reality. On the same scope that rain is reality. And when it's raining, do I fight against nature and try to say, oh, stop it, God? No, I adapt. Get an umbrella, stay out, stay in. In the same way, the people in your life, the things they're doing, this is reality. You adapt. You adjust. And we have amazing capacity to adapt. One of the things that is in this human form that is so unique is that we almost have an infinite capacity to adapt to any situation on the planet. And as black people, we have even a heightened ability to do this. You see, we can adapt to almost anything. And that's the ability I'm talking about. You adapt. Now, if the reality is that my wife is a lazy bum, which goes completely against my concept, my expectations, and all of that, I can either spend all that time trying to edit them right, or I can adapt. This is a lazy woman. Now, how do I be in a relationship with a lazy woman? What adjustment do I need to make? You see? Because it's a reality. Once you've gone into the karma, you can't extricate yourself. What you'll find is that, see, a lot of these situations that we get into, you can't erase. There are no erasers in life. You can't erase it. It's there. It's done. You're in the relationship. Or children has come now. Or something has happened. You can't erase it. You got to deal with that. Right? We keep thinking we can erase stuff. No. You can't erase no karma. You can adapt. You can't erase. But you'll notice that we have that mindset where we're going to try to erase things. Right? As if it never happened. No. It has happened. And the consequences will ripple through the rest of your life. You can't get out of the situation. You have to go through the karma. You understand me? You will go into a situation, you'll get into a bad relationship, and you'll try like hell to get out of a relationship, some shape, form, or fashion. But even if you physically remove yourself from the relationship, psychologically and emotionally, you're still in the relationship. The damage that the relationship has done, you're still carrying all that around. The effects are real. They can't be erased. Right? And the energy that you spend trying to erase should be shifted into just adapting. pure and simple.
And won't you carry that same attitude and behavior into the next relationship if you're able to divorce yourself physically from that relationship? It goes on and on and on and on.
All you really do, even if you're able to physically get yourself out of that situation, but you have not changed anything because your karma is just going to replace it with another person.
Until you learn that lesson.
Like
until you learn that lesson.
Until you learn that lesson, make that grow. And when you really begin to understand the flow of karma, you will begin to see that at every moment in life, there's this flow of events that are real. That which is truth. We talk so much about truth. Truth is not a dogma. It's not no set of beliefs. It's not doctrines. Truth is that which is. Whatever it is the truth. If it is raining, that's the truth. If it is snowing, that's the truth. If the person is lazy, shiftless, no good, a liar, that's the truth. Not doubt. It's the truth. Don't try to play games with that. Don't try to deceive yourself. Don't try to say, oh no, my wife is not, or my husband is not, or my man is not, or my woman is not, or my kid is not. Yes, your kid is. Now you adapt to that. And if you fail to adapt, if you don't have the ability to detach yourself from your preconceived notions about what should constitute reality, then you're going to lose this battle. You will not be able to defeat reality. It's not possible. It's not possible. Remember our ancient African ancestors talks about ma'at. Ma'at is meaning to get in harmony with reality. And when you are in harmony with reality, that is what we call ma'at. And that is what produced that state. And you know that the state of ma'at is characterized by the heightened experience of love, isn't it? The heightened experience of all of these qualities that we all are trying to develop in ourselves. But these developments, these spiritual attainments, comes as the ability to adapt to reality. That is why the ancient Africans studied cosmology so much, right? They're trying to get in sync with the universe, right? They want to know the raining seasons and when the Nile is going to flood so they can get to adapt, right? So if they can predict when the Nile is going to flood, they can adapt to that reality, right? Not trying to stop the Nile from flooding. How are you going to change the reality? What I'm saying is that just as there are realities of nature that we don't even think about trying to mess with, but when it comes into human relationship, we forget the karma of human relationship. This is reality. These people that we're in relationship to, these babies that we give birth to, these men and women that come in and out of life are part of the same natural order. They have a reality, and you better adapt and respond appropriately to whatever the reality dictates. And you can't do that if you're attached to trying to control the outcome of the situation. So you have to even have a different definition of truth. And one of the problems is that our definition of truth is just based on philosophy and interpretation of things. That's not truth. That's your spin you put on reality. Reality is independent of that. Reality is reality. Yes.
Yeah, Bhagwan, when you talk about this, it just seems that we're all probably a little bit neurotic.
Yeah.
I mean, we really are. We really are, because none of us are really facing reality.
Right.
And even though we're human beings, really the four-legged creatures are the ones that probably are more reality than we are.
They are.
Yes, they're living in reality.
Yes.
They don't even have the option.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
As a human being, we have the unique option to consciously get in line. Hence the capacity to have all this bliss. But the tiger has no option. They are in my heart. The trees are in my heart. The grass is in my heart. The only thing on this planet that is not in my heart is us. We are struggling against it. And it is the struggling against it that is the source of the misery that we experience. And in relationships especially, you see. Because the person talking, they can think, so you think that they somehow are divorced from nature and somehow supersede the law. No. This is the truth. This is the person you got. This is the person you have to adapt to. This is the kid you got. What are you going to do? Put the kid back in your womb and send it back up the fallopian tube? It doesn't work. You can't do it. The kid is out. Now the kid is a dope dealer. That's real. You have to adapt. You have to adjust. You have to get into my heart and behave responsibly. And if the responsible behavior means hide all your jewelry money, then that's what you do. But whatever the reality of the situation dictates, that's what you do. And you can't do that out of a preconceived set of notions. If the person in your life is truly as useless as you think, then you need to just, they're useless, okay, now adapt. Probably you useless too. Because we have to adapt to our own realities, don't we? I mean, the problem, folks, you see, that makes it difficult is that we can't adapt to our own realities. You can't accept the truth about yourself. And therefore, you are not in a position to accept the truth about anybody else. You see? So we really have to do that. Detachment is about all of that. Detachment is the thing. Detachment is the capacity to form an identity independent of your ego mythology. To know the self that is independent of the ego mythology. That's detachment. You detach now from even your own crap. You see? You get detached from that. It's a very, very profound thing. That's why the mystics talk so much about these things. You see? That you have to develop a detachment. You know, that's a prerequisite for living the spiritual life. You have to do that. And the detachment starts with oneself. So you're beginning to get out there. You said that we're not right. Absolutely right. All of us. We're trying to avoid adapting to reality. And not so much the reality of nature. We're trying to avoid adapting to the reality of each other. And this is the problem. Yes, brother?
Even, is it also true that we have to detach ourselves even from our own minds?
Yes. Yes. Now you begin to get the idea of it. Detachment starts first with the lower level. Right? And then one begins to move deeper and deeper into one. You have to detach yourself from your own mind, buying into your opinions, your so-called knowledge. You have to even become detached from that and say, I don't know nothing.
Yes.
I really don't.
Yeah.
You see, just with the same clarity that Bhagwan talked about earlier, when one looks deep and sees that, oh my God, I'm worthless, I have nothing to contribute to the world. It's not a fake act of humility. It's just the result of some ruthless self-honesty. Similarly, when you begin to examine your so-called repertoire of knowledge, you begin to discover that I don't know anything. Not directly, not out of my own experience. I have a lot of information, but information is second-handed. It's something I read in the book, heard in the lecture, watched on TV, etc. But it doesn't arise out of the authenticity and authority of my own experience. If I'm going to restrict myself to knowledge that has come from my own experience, then I really don't know anything. And then you have to get detached from your opinions. Now you won't be fighting anymore. You know, so much conflict comes, just stop fighting over your opinions. You got this opinion, somebody else got that opinion. Now you're ready to go to war over your opinions, when the reality is that neither one know anything. But you fighting to defend your ignorance, your interpretation, your philosophy, your spin. But it's really nothing. But when you understand, if I don't know anything, then you can still have an opinion, but you're not going to get uptight if somebody rejects it. It's okay. You detached. You can detach yourself from your opinion. You still have an opinion. You just have to understand it doesn't mean that anything outside change. It means that the inside of you change. You can let go of stuff. Right? You ain't clinging. You're not insisting. You ain't demanding. You see? So you're right, Satra. Eventually we get detached from our mind. We get detached from our whole sense of likes and dislikes. You notice, for instance, we only can act within the parameters of what we like and don't like. That pretty much governs the whole range of your behavior, your movement. But very often, sometimes you have to, in order to do that which is intelligent, you have to be able to do that which you don't like. It doesn't necessarily line up to it, right? So you have to be able to become detached from even the restrictions on being limited to doing what you like. You have to become detached. So all of that is slow. That is the objective of meditation. And meditation is a technique that actually trains you to first become detached from the body, because the first obstacle in meditation is at the body. Because you have to become detached from the pain. You'll spend years just trying to find a comfortable position where you don't experience any pain. There are no such positions. It takes a long time to realize that. You see, I remember in my own personal experience, I got a lot of use out of my master because I worried this teacher. You know what I mean? I mean, why should he sleep? I can't sleep. I got all these problems. You know, he shouldn't have accepted the responsibility. You know, I'm gonna take advantage. I was a very different kind of student. And in that respect, I wanted to seek and find out from him what was the asana, the pasta that I could adopt so that my body wouldn't hurt so much. Because, you know, you sit in a half an hour and Satara, you understand this, and Bhaktira and Baba, some of you who have ventured into this arena, that pain is so much. It feels as if someone is standing there stabbing you in your legs, right? And so I wrote to the master, I wanted to find out how, you know, what's the secret pasta, right? And the response is usual, you know, there are no secret pastas. In fact, he said, Leonard, what you're looking for is on the other side of the pain. Which means that I had to get detached from the pain. I had to get detached from it. Right? So, at the first stages of meditation, one simply learns how to detach oneself from the physical. Vegetarianism, you can detach from your food preferences. You detach. Right? You detach. That's a form of detachment. Right? You're no longer eating simply out of your taste buds. You're eating from a higher awareness. But that requires some detachment. And those of us who had to make the transition don't understand that. Or to drop drugs, alcohol, or anything for that matter, requires a certain degree of detachment, even at a physical level. So meditation is just an acceleration of this whole process of detachment across the entire spectrum of one's being. When you get to the level of the mind, you see the emotions. You're sitting in meditation, your mind keeps running to your problem because those things are emotionally charged. You're concerned about them. They're important to you. I gotta solve this here at 3 o'clock in the morning. I gotta figure this out. This is urgent. Now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The world is asleep, but you're sitting there as if you're trying to solve a problem from yesterday or tomorrow, and it's urgent. The emotions are involved. So one has to detach oneself even from these things, right? And so forth and so on. So this whole process of detachment, what I'm talking about is starting, however, is detaching within the context of your relationship, because if you can't detach within the context of your relationship, you're not going to be able to do any of these things. No, Satara, one of the greatest barriers to even just doing physical meditation or formal meditation is that we can't detach ourselves enough from our families to even pursue God. Because now if I pursue God, my wife may leave me. If I get too spiritual, I won't have anything in common, right, with my mate. They'll abandon me. So let me put this on hold. So many things. It's attachment. Right? Attachment is a useless side in a relationship. It's exploitation. Clinging to that person to derive some benefit from that person. Right? So hence the need to control and all that other thing. Yes? Oh no, he's not asking the question. I know your children are very precocious, so so there's a lot of things involved here. And so we want to talk about detachment. I don't know if we're ever going to have a chance, but somebody should remind me that sometime in the future that we should just set aside a whole couple of workshops and just talk about the karma of human relationships, the role of detachment, and the role of duty. Right? We got enough other stuff in place. Are there any other questions, comments? Last call on male-female stuff? Huh? Next week we'll have a summary and make mention of a few other things, but let's take advantage of it. Even whether Bilal is rolling or not, I'm prepared today. Yes, I want to finish up.
You were talking about useless and how women nag. Well, what about those women who don't necessarily nag, but, you know, they're in this relationship and they make the best of it? And is that useless or is that contributing?
Well, I'll let you answer that question.
No, it's not me.
It's not you?
But I'm sure. No, but I'm sure we all know women like this. You know, maybe he's not necessarily a physical abuser, but whatever his faults are, you know, and then this woman just puts up with it because maybe her children or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't nag and she accepts this man because, you know, that's her husband.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is she's on the useless side or the contributing side?
Well, how do you understand the meaning of a useless side in a relationship?
How do I understand it?
Because it doesn't matter what I understand, it's what you understand.
I don't know.
You don't
I mean, I'm looking at somebody that, I mean, I don't want to be judgmental, but to me, if it's not benefiting you and if you're unhappy, to me, that's useless. But I don't know anything. You know, I'm just on the outside looking in. I mean, you know.
The question is she making a contribution to this man by suppressing, nagging, not nagging, staying with the children? Let me see what some of these other people would say. Huh? All of this you. Someone answer a question. Let's take a question.
I would say something from the worthless side.
You would say from the worthless side?
Yeah, because she's the more mature person in the relationship. And the man is like a child. He's, you know, he ain't got control of his emotions and his desires. So she is trying to get she's trying to make that relationship out of the best that she can make it out of by putting up with that stuff, you know. And she's not complaining about it. She's sort of like dealing with it in a way where she figured he'll come around in the long run.
Or maybe she knows he won't come around, but she make the best out of it.
Obviously, she don't know that. Obviously, she's hoping that he will, because that's probably why she's putting up with it. She's being sort of like a guru, a master. And some, the way I see it is, you know, she got to be a hell of a person to sit there and know what's going on and still deal with the situation. I mean, some people do have, it's no, she probably have a time limit, you know, as far as how long she'll put up with it, but by, you know, I mean, she maybe don't want to just say, throw that against the wall and just go jump in another relationship and go through the same thing all over again. So she's giving it all its worth. So when she do decide to step up out of it, she won't have no guilty conscience.
So I guess you have to look at what it is that you're putting up with, because I get when I heard the scenario, I tend to think of like an alcoholic husband versus a woman who doesn't drink or a drug abuser or whatever. But so it depends on, I think, what it is that you're looking at. If she's putting up with something like that, I think it's a useless situation only because what is it that she's getting out of it? And also, what is it that he's getting out of it? Because if she keeps feeding into his problem something else that he doesn't need or can't get from her, then they need to move on and get whatever it is that they're both looking for to make, because she might be an insecure, weak person, and she has to hang on, or she's detached to the situation. So there's a lot of, I think the question is sort of generic. You have to look at the whole picture and also figure out what it is that what the problem is. Because it might be what you're talking about, the person is putting up with him being junky. Well, that's not really a problem. You know what I'm saying? So it depends. So it's hard to answer that question without having more information.
Well, Baba can do this, Baba. He has this ability.
Well, I think the question is why. You know, why is she doing this? Is she doing this simply because she's afraid to leave, or is she contributing? If she's not contributing, then she's useless. Because, you know, just because she's there and she's allowing him basically to do whatever, to do this, I mean, she may have no idea what she's doing. I mean, she may just be there because she don't have any place else to go. She could still be she's still be, my guess, it's like Bhagwan said, you really don't know. Maybe this woman has found her dharma, and she's there, and she's good, you know, she's contributing her gift, and it's to, you know, leave this man, let him do what he's doing. But then again, maybe she's there because, you know, she don't know what else to do. And I think that in most cases of women in situations like that, where they let men do whatever they want to do, simply because they don't know what else to do. And I would say in that situation, they're useless. They're useless.
Because Georgie, you said this is scenario that a lot of women fit in?
Oh yeah, in different aspects. It doesn't mean that.
Enlighten me about this.
It doesn't mean that he's beating her. I mean, it could be any number of things, okay? But the point is, we were talking about how women nag. Some women don't nag. They just accept it. Exactly, okay? And, I mean, so if they accept this, and like you were saying a little while ago, that, okay, this is my karma or whatever, and I'm supposed to be with this person, so is that contributing or is that useless? I mean,
Well,
there's
please
so
make
many
a
different ways to
distinction
look at
between
that.
surrendering and acceptance. Very different phenomenon.
And
Okay.
also too, she could be just a walking time bomb. In her mind, she could be just thinking, God, he's gonna keep on, and one day, like you said, she doesn't have anywhere to go. But in her mind, she's studied listening to this, and it's eating at her, and it's eating at her, and it's tearing at her, and she's thinking, okay, my kids are young. What am I gonna do? I can't go anywhere. I can't do this. But also in her mind, she's thinking, I'm gonna walk out of here, and I'm gonna get tired, and when I'm gone, he's gonna miss me. When I'm gone, you don't know. See, if you've never been in that situation, you don't know. You know, so you never know what she's thinking. She could be thinking. Soon as she get her chance to, she's out of there. She's out of there. But for now, she's trying to make it work because of those children. Because I mean, statistics says black families, all they do is sex. She don't want to be a statistic. That could be what it is. She don't want to be a statistic, so she's trying to make it work.
Emma had a comment.
Now that's
All right.
Now that's amazing, the comments that y'all coming up with, because
This is
it's
amazing.
always just the women always is so willing to just jump out of the fire. I mean, you know, as soon as the fire starts, they just, you know, they just ready to just jump out, you know. That situation you talking about, I'm in that situation. I'm in that situation.
Well, I'm like the brother too. I think maybe the men just suppress
Oh
what they
my
really.
God.
No, he just spoke out. I think we suppressing it because I heard something that. Yeah, but brother, I heard something that I never heard of. That a lot of women are not nagging. I heard her say that, and I was like.
Yes, some women don't. A lot of women do not.
Well, maybe a lot of times what you all call nagging. I mean, what you saying that you're not nagging to
I
men,
am sorry
it may
about
be
this
nagging.
stuff. I am
But
really sorry.
no, don't be sorry. But no, it's something that I never heard. I mean, maybe I'm in another world. Because
But you don't know
now,
all women. You gotta talk about the women you know.
No, I'm not just
I
saying
know more
that.
women than you do.
Probably.
Women don't know.
I agree. No.
We have some sober
Oh
words
my
from
God.
Linda. Are you going to fuel the fire?
It's just that after she's given it a lot of thought and consideration, she may have made her point to her man, okay, and her point was that she's displeased with whatever he's doing, okay, whether it's mental or physical abuse, whatever. But, I mean, what can she do? If she's detached herself from it to
What
say,
keeps
well,
anybody in the situation?
They haven't had enough. When they have
Right.
enough, they'll make a move. They're gonna make a
Right.
change. It don't matter how many babies that woman got. When she get up to the eyeballs, she gonna do something.
If she has self-respect. But some women never get enough.
No,
They
that's
say
not
they after
right.
a man kill 'em or
Enough,
beat 'em to
enough
death.
is relative.
This is interesting because
Enough is relative,
what
but when
Dorothy
she
is
get
suggesting
enough,
is that women
she
in
gonna
this
pick it up.
culture may suffer collectively from an absence of self-respect. I think that was her original drift that she wanted to put on the table for you all to consider. Is that correct, Dorothy?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
And is that a valid perception? Is that the case? Do it? Most women suffer from a lack of self-respect
a lot of
that
women
causes them to have
I think so.
high feelings of worthlessness, and therefore they do not protest the
And
conditions
some of them just suffer silently.
because they say, I'm worthless. What can I do? It doesn't matter. I'm just, you know.
Why is it that they have such? Why is it?
And
that
why
most-
is it that they feel worthless?
Yeah, why is it that most women feel like that?
That's a very, and these are the kind of directions you need to take. Because that is the reality. All right?
Is it because most women don't have men in their lives? Would that be a connection?
It's interesting. You all have the adequate tools to explore. You see? And I would like you to continue to explore. Although officially we have ended, but you should not end simply because the camera is on. Sometimes that is the time to really go at it. But you have to find the answer to these questions. You see, you really do. How many women find themselves in relationships and they're basically in those relationships because they are feeling trapped. That the situation is such, the karma is such that they can't get out right now, and they just got to suffer the consequences. But as soon as these consequences end, as soon as light breaks, they out of here. You see, that describes a lot of people. And the keeper said, and what caused that? And what about the men in the room who's saying, well, you know, women tend to run from, you know, the crisis in relationships. Rob is very upset, Dorothy, with this comment. You have to give him some therapy. Lieutenant has some comments.
I'm going to say to Dorothy that sometimes men feel the same way. Too.
Oh my God.
Sometimes the chief will keep it down. I mean, it just ain't women in situations because whatever reasons, you know. And, you know, men sometimes may feel trapped the same way. I mean, it seems like this whole class is in favor of women. That's right. All right? No. I know we got 80%, but sometimes you got to look at it too. The flip side, sometimes men may feel the same way.
No, I'm not saying
I'm in favor. And Brother Leonard Joyce just said on her voice, she never seen a man feel like that. That's why I said maybe that they're trapped. That the woman have them trapped.
Oh, that happens.
Earlier in this session here, we were talking about expectations. You know, I really feel that just like with men and women, a lot of these women are in situations, I think especially black women right now, a lot of them are in situations with men simply because they can't find men to meet the expectations they have. And, you know, and it's not that they're in this situation where a man is just so overbearing and overpowerful. Because you find right now, a great majority, especially black women, they have actually financially, they're over the men quite often, and in other areas. And I think that I'm finding a lot of the women that I've met, black women, they can't find a man because they can't reach down. Yeah, that's very interesting. You know, I find that to be the case. They say they can't find a man. Simply because they can't find a man on their level is what they're saying.
Oh, God.
That's what I really believe that. I've seen that.
Sometimes, but not the majority of the time, it's not true.
It's out there though.
Because, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Because, okay, you figure that you got so many men who they only want you if you have light skin and long hair, and then you got these men that are in jail, and then you got these men that don't want anybody over 30. I mean, we could just go on and on, Bhagwan, okay? And then all these men who are like that, oh, they can't find a decent woman. Why not? You get all these women out here.
Those are the same characteristics that black women look for in a light skin man.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Not necessarily now. Not necessarily.
I think this could
not necessarily.
forever.
Yes, it could. Yes, it could.
You all can keep that on going. I'm going to go over and do a little work. We need not go anywhere. We still have plenty of refreshment. And really, it's good that you come back and forth with these kind of things as well.
Now, answer this question. Statements about women